Hi, today we're going to tie this Hendrickson pattern here. It's a CDC Thorax pattern, for lack of a better way of calling it, but it is different from the Rene Hair version. This is a I got this idea from Jonny King to tie him like this. Anyway, he's from New York and fishes the Delaware system quite often, as do I, and has had success using this hook style and this wing assembly style. So figured I'd give it a shot. I posted this on Fly Tires Anonymous and on the fly tying forum, a couple variations of this fly, and people had questions about how the wing was tied in. So I'm gonna do a step-by-step to show that. Hook I'm using is a size 14 1230. It's a Daiichi 1230 Truform mayfly hook. It's a size 2 extra large 14, so it's really more like on the big side of 12. So these hooks, the smallest they get is a size 14. So to use this exact hook, you'd be fishing Hendricksons on up to hexagenias, because they go 10. I think they go down to an 8 maybe. I know they at least go 10, 12. They may go down to an 8. So I'm going to start my thread. And for thread, I'm just going to use some Danville here. You can use any variety of threads. Vivis, you can use whatever your heart desires. I'm just happen to like this tan color. Kind of blends in with the other materials that I'm using to tie a Hendrickson. It's also a flossy thread, so it flattens out. So I broke the tag off and I'm putting that in a material clip. This is to help split a 3-tailed microfibet tail. I'm using 3 fibers from a microfibet bunch. I have those selected and lined up so the tips are even. This is about the hook shank in length, so I'm going to sort of measure that out. You see how my thumb is at the hook eye. I'm going to transfer that measurement to my other hand, bring it to the rear. 1 loose wrap, a second wrap to bring the fibers up to the top of the hook bend, and then I'm going to proceed to wrap towards the bend of the hook. This making sure that with each touching turn, these fibers remain as close to the top of the hook shank as I can keep them. You want them really directly on top of that hook shank. That way you can split those fibers evenly. Now you see how they're pointing down as I apply some tension on the thread. That's kind of where I stop my wraps towards the hook barb. I come around the back with 1 turn of thread and then wrap a couple turns forward. This helps to prop the wing up, to prop the tails up. And then I'm just kind of splaying them apart and trying to get them into a position I like. Now I'm going to take that thread I put aside. I'm going to put it through the barb, through the hook bend, and I'm going to run this between the center fiber and inside the 2 outside fibers. So I split the tail like so and keep it. Sometimes you pull a little too hard. There it is. It's still there. So you want to just be careful that you don't pull the tailing fibers all the way forward. Now I'm doing my best to just kind of neatly wrap this into the hook here. I want to continually bind down this thread with touching turns as I move back to the tie-in point, which is that index point is right where the hook starts to bend up. I'm gonna, the hackle, the thorax, and the wing setting points sort of are all related to that index point. So That's my stopping point there. Now I'm going to build a taper. Hendricksons are kind of a thick bug, so I'm going to bulk this up a little bit with thread. Actually, it may behoove me to use like 210 denier or something thicker. I'm using 70, and then switch the thread for finishing down to a 70 denier or 6/0 Danville, but this is fine. Danville's a pretty inexpensive thread for the money too. It's this, you got 200 meters on a spool or 200 yards as opposed to 100 when you buy ultra thread. And so, and the price is either the same or less. So it's actually pretty cheap thread, but it's a decent thread. Comes in a lot of fishy colors. For these larger flies, I like to use 6/0 Danville. When I go smaller, I switch to Vivus thread. That's just a personal choice. So anyway, I'm adding some taper to this body. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to wrap it back towards the bend of the hook here, and I'm going to land it right where I want to tie my next material, which is, the next material is turkey biot here. This is dyed Hendrickson pink. And as you notice, this biot feather has a shiny side and that's kind of translucent, and a raised side with like a raised edge on it. You want the shiny side to be facing the back of the fly. And I'm also not tying it at the tip of the biot feather. I'm tying it in a bit in order to have that that translucent side really cover up the ridged part as it wraps forward. This makes a smooth yet segmented body. I'm tying this in, and then I'm trying to make sure that I'm keeping that body in a uniform tapered direction towards the thorax. So now that I have the hackle, I have the biot feather positioned where I want to, I'm going to actually, I'm going to grab some glue here. I'm going to use, this is Z-Ment, which is a slower drying version of Zap-A-Gap. This will just sort of keep the biot from unraveling after fish just wail on this fly, because that's what's going to happen. These flies are so awesome that fish are just going to chew the fly up. So if you're like me and you want to have fish just constantly chewing on your flies, that's what happens when you fish flies that look this good, is that the fish just eat them right all the time without no questions asked. You never have to worry about a drag-free drift. Now I'm just joking. Anyway, so I'm wrapping that quill back to the index point, and I just capture it. I'm going to clean up a little bit here. Tie it. I'm sort of wrapping in this excess quill up the hook shank, but really I'll just cover it with some wraps here, and that becomes a little bit thicker hook base there. Now I'm back here to where I'm going to tie in my hackle feather here. This is a whiting saddle, rooster saddle feather. This actually came off a midge saddle, but it's on the big side of 14. So in prepping this hackle, I just left a little tie-in anchor. Let's see if I can get this into the camera for those people who are kind of still starting out. You see those little fibers there? That just really helps it stay in place. And I leave an ample amount of bare stem because this hackle is going to actually help wrap the wing. And when I tie this hackle in, I want it so that the shiny side is facing forward. And that way the hackles aren't flaring up towards the eye of the hook. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some dubbing. This is super fine in Hendrickson. Be sure to, you don't want to overdo it with this dubbing. When you dub the thorax, you want to err on the side of adding less than you think you need. If you add too much, it's really hard to get off your thread, so it's good to just sort of be diligent about how much you add in the first place. I'm just slowly but surely building up a ball here, a thorax ball. So if you were tying in a conventional CDC thorax done, you'd have tied the wing in, I think, before all of this, or you tie it in a different order. I'm setting the wing actually in front of the thorax, and I'm also setting the wing facing backwards. Now I'm going to get 3 CDC feathers from, these are Trout Hunter, so these are premium CDC feathers. Let's see if I get the package right here. Take a look at these. I like to use high quality CDC for my wings and for duns. You know, the lower quality stuff is good for, you can use for legs and emergers that maybe you don't want even to float on the film. But where you're looking to ride these, you know, looking for flotation, you really want a nice full feather with a lot of preen oil in it. So I have 3 of these lined up, and now I'm stroking the fibers, the feather fibers, towards the tips that are lined up to make a sort of a bundle of feather here. This bundle here is going to be your wing, and you want it to be the length of the shank or slightly longer. Really, it doesn't matter if it's slightly longer because we're going to give this a haircut. So 1 loose wrap, a couple of tight wraps to set it. And you're tying it like you would a caddis wing, but it will become a mayfly wing, as you'll see, as I'll show you. So this is, you're tying it in pointing towards the back of the hook here. And now I'm just going to trim out the excess fibers. This hook style is pretty forgiving because it just sets that index point in a perfect place, so you don't really rush the hook eye. You got a lot of space. So now I'm just kind of cleaning up the CDC, and as you can tell, there's some space for more dubbing, so I'm going to add a little more dubbing. So I'm just sort of flushing out the front of this fly a little bit more, maybe adding to the thorax some, giving the hackle a little something to bite down on as you set the wing with it. So this is the cool part, and maybe the slightly tricky part. So just trying to make sure that my hackle is gonna wrap in the way I want it to. So I'm going to start it and make sure that my shiny side is facing forward. And then I'm going to take some of these wing fibers and I'm going to cross the hackle through them. And then as I turn under the wing, I'm kind of propping, with my hand, propping the CDC up so that it doesn't spin around the hook underneath the hook. And I'm wrapping a second bunch and doing the same thing, a third, if I can get a third bunch through there. And that just it seems counterintuitive, but what it, I just lost my work here. It seems counterintuitive, but what's happening here is it's actually setting the wing in a way that it's propping it up and binding it down. So it's really kind of making a nice flat wing profile that stands, in a way, is standing up. So now I can afford a couple more turns in front to kind of have a nice full hackle collar here. And now I'm going to capture this hackle. A couple of turns. And when I see that I like that, I'm going to come in with my tying scissors, trim this hackle off nice and close. Being careful not to trim any of the main part of the collar away. And if you see there's stuff approaching the eye, you kind of want to get rid of that. I got like a CDC fiber crossing the eye too. That's probably not going to be a problem, but I just ripped that out by hand. All right, so now you just kind of clean up the head again with a couple of turns, and we can whip finish. Now you can see this fly is kind of like a big, poofy mess where the wing is. It's not quite the finished pattern, but that's okay because we're going to come in with some scissors and give it a haircut. What I like to do before that, though, is I'm going to trim out the hackle underneath here. So basically, I'm creating a flush riding dry fly here by trimming it down to the thorax. I think that's good for now. Then I'm going to stroke these fibers upward. And I'm going to come in with some curved scissors and give this guy a haircut here. I'm going to take some off the top first. Like so. And then I'm going to come around and I want to be careful not to overdo it. Kind of just gradually form my wing here. If you overdo it, you can't go back. So it's kind of like you don't want to take too much off at first. And then when you're happy with the shape, you just kind of call it done. But this is it. This is the final steps, is just kind of cutting this wing into shape. You want to get a nice mayfly shape here. And also, I kind of want to leave, if I err on the side of it being too wide, that's fine. Actually, Hendricksons have a pretty beefy wing setup. But this wing is both for profile and for flotation. So if you take too much away, you're going to risk the performance aspect of the bug. And that's really 90% of what catches the fish, is how it rides on the water. And then, or maybe 60% or something. The silhouette is important, but the silhouette is not really going to be what you want it to be if it's not riding right. So it's really important when you're making flies to consider how they're going to present. So I'm going to continue to inspect this, making sure that I have my hackle fibers are pointing off the sides. They'll act as outriggers to keep the bug riding on the film, hopefully straight up and down, the wing cocked up. And I'm pretty close to calling that done, or a done. And that's it. There you have it. I'll give you a nice 360 here. You got the underside of the wing. I mean, I really love the way these hooks look. This will be my first season trying them out next year, so I can't vouch for. Though Jonny King said he caught his best dry fly fish on one of these in a blog post several years back. So hey, if it's working on the Delaware, it works for me. Anyway, I hope you get something out of this. Hope you enjoy the video, and for you guys up on the forum here, I hope this answers your questions.